I still remember the smell of coffee that morning, the one thing keeping me sane before another long shift at the hospital. My apartment was my safe space, my small slice of peace after 12-hour days surrounded by chaos and exhaustion. I had spent years saving every extra penny to furnish it exactly how I wanted, a soft beige sectional, a marble dining table, and that massive oak bed that made me feel like I'd finally made it on my own. Every single piece was a quiet symbol of independence and pride. When I left for work that day, I had no idea I'd come home to an apartment that didn't feel like mine anymore. It started with a phone call from my sister. Of all people. "Hey, you're gonna thank me later," she said in that breezy, smug tone I've hated since we were kids. I remember pausing mid-step, my phone pressed to my ear, my badge still clipped to my scrubs. "Thank you for what?" I asked. Already bracing myself, she giggled. "You'll see when you get home." By the time I pulled into my parking spot that evening, I could already feel something was wrong. The hallway felt too quiet. The door felt too light when I opened it, like it wasn't holding the same world behind it anymore. And then I saw it. My apartment was empty. No couch, no dining table, no bed, not even the damn curtains. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I'd been punched. For a second, I thought maybe I'd been robbed. But there was no sign of a break-in, no damage, no mess, just silence and echo. Then, on the counter, my mom's handwriting neat and deliberate on a folded note. "Your sister just moved into her new house and didn't have anything. She's family. You can always buy new furniture later. Don't be selfish." Mom. My knees nearly gave out. I just stared at that note for what felt like hours, reading it again and again, hoping I was misunderstanding. $13,800. That's how much I had spent furnishing this place. I'd worked double shifts for months, skipped nights out, cut corners just to make my home feel like mine. And now, it was gone. My first call was to my mom. She picked up on the second ring, sounding way too calm. "Mom, where is my furniture?" I demanded, my voice already shaking. "Oh honey, don't start," she sighed. "You know your sister's been struggling. She's got the kids. She just moved, and well, you're single. You don't need all that fancy stuff." I could actually feel my jaw lock. "You stole from me," I said, barely above a whisper. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped back. "It's family. We share." Share. That word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. My sister and I never shared. She took, I worked. That was the pattern. Always had been. And my mom, she enabled it every single time. When we were kids, if there was one cookie left, it was always give it to your sister. She's younger. When I got my first job, Mom made me help my sister buy a car. When I got into nursing school, Mom said, "Don't brag. It makes your sister feel bad." It was like my success had always been something to apologize for. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. But that night, lying on the floor of my empty apartment, I cried until I couldn't anymore. Every emotion crashed over me: anger, betrayal, disbelief. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that stupid note on the counter, with its self-righteous tone by the next morning, though something in me snapped. The kind of quiet anger that doesn't scream at plans. I started digging. First, I called the furniture store. The receipts were still in my email. Every item was purchased under my name, on my credit card. Every delivery signed for by me. I had all the proof I needed. Then I checked the delivery logs. The furniture hadn't been stolen, it had been moved. My mom had called the moving company the same day, pretending to be me. She even forged my signature on the pickup form. That's when I realized this wasn't helping family. It was theft, and they thought I'd just let it go. I took the next day off work. I drove straight to my sister's new house, the one Mom wouldn't stop bragging about. When she opened the door, her face froze. Behind her, my couch, my table, my rug, all of it, arranged exactly how it had been in my apartment. "Wow," I said softly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Looks familiar." Her smile faltered. "Oh come on, Mom said you were fine with it." "Did she also say I'd press charges for theft?" Her face went pale. "You wouldn't." I looked her dead in the eye. "Try me." That's when Mom came in from the kitchen, acting like I was the problem. "You're making a scene," she hissed. "You're being ungrateful. We raised you better than this." Ungrateful. My hands were trembling, but I held her gaze. "You didn't raise me, Mom. You raised a servant." The silence that followed was almost satisfying. Almost, but I didn't come there to argue. I came there to make it clear. This wasn't over. I turned on my phone camera, recorded everything, every piece of furniture, every serial number sticker I could find, every corner of the house that held something I bought. My mom screamed at me to stop recording, but I didn't. I walked through that house with the calm precision of someone who'd finally stopped caring about being the good daughter. When I left, I drove straight to the police station. The officer at the desk was surprisingly understanding. I explained everything, showed him the receipts, the photos, and the forged moving form. He looked at me and said, "You have a solid case. Do you want to press charges?" For a second, I hesitated. These were my family, my mother, my sister. But then I remembered the months of exhaustion, the loneliness. The way my mom's voice always dripped with guilt whenever I said no. "Yes," I said quietly, "I do." That night, my phone exploded with messages. My mom called me heartless. My sister said I'd ruined her life. And for the first time in years, I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I didn't care. But that was just the beginning, because I soon realized pressing charges wasn't enough. They'd taken from me for years, time, money, respect. This time, I was taking something back. Something they'd never see coming. The next few days were a blur of anger and adrenaline. I kept replaying every word my mom had said. "You're being selfish. She's family." That line echoed in my head like poison. It wasn't about the furniture anymore. It was about every time I'd been told to shrink so my sister could shine. Every time my achievements were downplayed so she wouldn't feel bad. I was done being the responsible one, done being the doormat. The detective handling my case called me 2 days later. He said they'd reached out to my mom and sister for questioning. Apparently, my mom had tried to spin some story about borrowing my furniture temporarily. The officer told me. She was defensive, very defensive. Yeah, that sounded about right. I wasn't even angry at that point. I was focused. Focused in a way I hadn't been in years. The kind of clarity that only comes after you stop caring about keeping the peace. Then, something interesting happened. My landlord called me. "Hey, I just got off the phone with your mom," he said hesitantly. "She asked if you were planning to move out soon. Said you might be relocating." My jaw dropped. "Excuse me," she said she was your emergency contact and needed to confirm some things. I didn't give her anything, don't worry. But she's trying to access your lease details. That's when I realized they weren't just taking from me. They were trying to erase me. My mother actually wanted to push me out of my own home so my sister could keep my furniture guilt-free. I knew then that this had to go beyond just a police report. They needed a wake-up call they would never forget, so I got strategic. First, I called my lawyer, an older woman I'd met through work. Someone who didn't take nonsense from anyone. I told her everything. She listened quietly, then said, "They forged your signature and transferred property worth thousands. That's criminal fraud, not just theft." We drafted an official demand letter. It listed every item taken, their combined value, and gave them 72 hours to return everything before we pursued legal and criminal action. I sent copies to both my mom and sister, along with the case number. The silence that followed was golden. 3 days passed. Nothing. Then, on the 4th day, I got a text from my sister. It was just one line. "You didn't have to do this." No apology, no remorse, just guilt-tripping, their favorite weapon. I ignored it. Instead, I forwarded that message to my lawyer. She replied with a simple, "We proceed." That's when things started getting really interesting. My sister's husband, who, until now, had stayed conveniently quiet, called me out of nowhere. His tone was oddly respectful. "Listen," he said, "I didn't know your mom had done that. She told me the furniture was hers. We can work something out." "Oh, can we?" I said calmly. "Because as far as the police are concerned, you're in possession of stolen property." He went quiet for a moment. I'll talk to her." Within 24 hours, the tone of the entire family shifted. My mom went from arrogant to pleading. "You're really going to send your own mother to jail?" she said over the phone, her voice trembling with false emotion. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to feel it. Then I said, "You made that choice when you signed my name." She hung up on me. But she wasn't done. A few days later, I got a call from my aunt, the family mediator, the one who always tries to keep everyone from falling apart. "Honey," she said softly, "I know what your mom did was wrong, but maybe there's another way. Can't you just forgive her?" Forgive her. That word made my blood boil. Forgiveness was how they reset everything, every lie, every manipulation, every theft. They used it like a get-out-of-jail-free card. "Not this time. I'm not doing this for revenge," I said, though we both knew part of me was, I'm doing this because I'm done letting her think there are no consequences. The legal process moved faster than I expected. The police filed an official report and contacted both my mom and sister for statements. Suddenly, their confident tone crumbled. My sister texted me late at night, long messages full of excuses. Mom said you were okay with it. I didn't want to upset her. I didn't realize it would cause so much trouble. Every line reeked of cowardice, so I ignored them again. Silence was my new language, and they hated it. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding, piece by piece. I refused to let them steal more of my energy. I worked extra shifts, redecorated my apartment, this time in a completely different style. Stronger, darker tones, sleek, modern furniture that felt like armor. It wasn't about the things anymore. It was about reclaiming control. Then came the hearing. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies, just a small courtroom, a judge, and a stack of papers taller than my patience. My mom tried to look pitiful, dressed in soft colors, voice trembling like she was the victim. The judge wasn't buying it. When the forged documents were presented, my mom's fake signature, her calls to the moving company pretending to be me, I watched her facade crack. My sister stared at the floor the whole time. The judge looked directly at my mother and said, "You do realize what you've done constitutes fraud, correct?" Mom mumbled something about family misunderstandings, but the judge interrupted. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is theft and forgery." Hearing those words, theft and forgery, out loud, in a courtroom, was cathartic. Years of buried frustration unraveled in that moment. In the end, the judge ordered them to return every single item or pay me the full value plus legal costs. My mom's face turned ghost white when she realized what that meant. The next week, a moving truck arrived at my apartment. Everything, the sofa, the table, the bed, came back, piece by piece. Some items were scratched, some damaged, but I didn't care. Watching those movers carry my things back into my home felt like justice made visible. My mom refused to come inside. She stood by her car, sunglasses hiding her eyes. My sister, though, tried to talk to me. "I didn't know she'd go that far," she said quietly. I just looked at her. "You didn't stop her either." She didn't respond. When the last item was placed inside, I signed the delivery form and closed the door without saying another word. I stood there in the quiet, surrounded by my things, my space, and for the first time in a long time, it actually felt like mine. But something still burned inside me, a thought I couldn't shake because even though I'd won legally, they still didn't get it. They still saw me as the difficult one, the ungrateful daughter, the one who made trouble. That's when I decided, if they wouldn't learn their lesson through the law, they'd learn it through their reputation. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. The plan I cooked up wasn't dramatic fireworks or some TV-style trap. It was simple, surgical, and exactly the kind of thing that would hurt them where they had always hurt me. Their image, if they wanted to act like what they did was no big deal, I would make sure everyone who mattered to them could see the facts in plain daylight. I started by compiling everything. Receipts, the forged pickup form, timestamps from the moving company, the police report, the judge's order. I even had photos from my sister's house showing my furniture with my name still on the tags. I put it all together in a clear, calm document. No yelling, no theatrical language, just evidence. Then I recorded myself explaining the timeline, the exact ways I'd been gaslit into thinking I was being overly sensitive for years, and how the theft wasn't a one-off but part of a pattern. I posted the video on a private family group first, the one that always had polite comments about casseroles and birthdays. My hands didn't shake as I hit post. I'd rehearsed this speech in my head 1,000 times, and this time there would be no begging for approval, no apologizing for existing. Responses came flooding in. Not the frantic defenses I'd feared, but stunned silence, then questions. Neighbors I'd never met messaged me, some saying they'd seen my furniture at yard sales, some asking if I was okay. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years wrote, "I had no idea." The difference this time was the evidence. You can gaslight a person, but you can't gaslight a stack of signed receipts and a court order. Word spread, not in the cruel, vengeful way I'd imagined, more like a slow, steady ripple that exposed a truth they couldn't tidy away with excuses. My mom started getting messages from people who had once trusted her word, people who had sponsored her volunteer group, neighbors who had always admired her warmth. The calls she used to make to guilt others into compliance were no longer effective when the community could see the facts laid out. I didn't humiliate her with theatrics. I let the evidence do that work. I let people interpret. I let the truth show that the pattern of minimizing And manipulating wasn't just between us, it had run through the family for years. That, for me, was the most satisfying part. The power dynamic finally shifted. They could no longer hide behind family as a shield for bad behavior. There were consequences, practical and quiet. My sister's husband began to avoid family dinners. The aunt who always smooths things over stopped sending her hallmarks of sympathy. Mom's volunteer organization asked her to step back while they reviewed the complaints. I didn't gloat. I simply watched the ripples, felt the balance tilt back toward me, and let myself exhale for the first time in months. The hardest moment came when I saw my mother alone on the porch one evening, the same posture she'd used to lecture me about gratitude. She looked smaller, not because I'd done anything cruel, but because the facade that had kept her safe for so long had been removed. There was no triumphant face, just a thin, resigned woman who'd finally been forced to face the impact of her choices. In the weeks that followed, we navigated the most awkward of family terrains, restitution payments, an uneasy truce, and a lot of silent dinners. My sister sent a clumsy text offering to help replace a scratched leg on my table. I accepted it, not because I wanted to be magnanimous, but because I wanted normalcy, and because revenge had never been about making them suffer endlessly. It was about making sure my life, my labor, and my dignity were respected. What I learned was sharper than any victory. Justice tastes better when it's measured and clear, not vindictive. Speaking up wasn't betrayal, it was bound. I realized I'd been apologizing for my existence for years, and that had to stop. Reclaiming my things was one thing, reclaiming my voice was another. That voice didn't need to be loud to be effective. It just needed to be honest. People ask if I still talk to my mom. Sometimes. Not like before. Trust was broken, and mending it would take more than a judge's order. Maybe someday we'll get there. For now, I sleep in my own bed, on my own terms. I sit on my couch and the sunlight falls on the coffee table I bought with extra shifts and careful budgeting. Every scratch and dent tells a story, not of pain, but of endurance. If there's any takeaway I want you to remember, it's this: family loyalty is a beautiful thing when it's mutual. It's poisonous when it's used as a weapon to excuse theft, manipulation, or disrespect. You don't owe people silence simply because they share your last name. The most powerful revenge isn't cruelty, it's choosing yourself and holding people accountable in ways that are fair and proportionate. If this story hit a nerve, hit the like button and tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to someone close to you? What did you do? And if you want more stories where just as low, messy, and satisfying finally finds its mark, subscribe and don't miss the next one.